Good evening, everyone.
Kabutaha, how are you?
Oh Hashem, thank you. I think we're going to the next chapter here, which is Vav. So here it says, Nashim chayavot b'Birkat Hamazon. Women are also obligated to do Birkat Hamazon. And where is the source for this? Perek Misha Meto in Brachot Chaf Amud Aleph. Tanan Nashim ba'avodim ktanim ptorim b'Kriyat Shema. It says there women and slaves and children are absolved from Kriyat Shema, Uminat Tfilah, and also from the prayer. Tefillin, I'm sorry, from Tefillin. But they're obligated in Tefillah, in prayers, or Mezuzah, and also Mezuzah, and also Birkat Hamazon. They have to do Birkat Hamazon, the women also. So it says in Gemara, these rabbis said, Nashim bebrachot Birkat Hamazon deoraita, right, or derabanan. The question is, are they obligated to do Birkat Hamazon from the Torah or from the rabbis? The mind of Kaminas is what's a practical application? Can they fulfill the obligation of others? If you're going to tell me that it's from the Torah, so then she can fulfill the obligation of others which are also from the Torah. But if you're going to tell me that's rabbinical, so then she's not really obligated from the Torah. So then she cannot fulfill the obligation of others, since their obligation is from the Torah. Tashma, so it brings a source, a answer for this. באמת אמרו בן מברך לאביו ועבד לרבו. They said that the son can bless for his father and the slave can bless for his master. ואישה לבעלה, and also the wife can bless for her husband. אבל אמרו חכמים תבוא מהרה לאדם שאשתו ובניו מברכים לו. But the rabbi said, that whoever his wife blesses for him, that's a curse. He gets a curse. He gets cursed on that. So meaning to say, right, that the husband should be doing it. So it's not proper that he should have his wife do it for him. Okay. Or children, the same thing with the children. Yeah, I'm not bishlama deoraita. If you're gonna tell me it's from the Torah, I'll tell deoraita, I'm not picking deoraita. Then something which is from the Torah can come and fulfill the obligation of something which is from the Torah. Ella, I'm not bishlama derabbanan. If you're gonna tell me, however, that it's from the rabbis, I'll tell derabbanan, I'm not picking deoraita. What the rabbis can come and fulfill something from the Torah? No. Katan bar chiyuva. So then Gemara asks, right? If you're going according to that right, thinking, reasoning, what Katan, right? The child, Baruch Yuva, what he's obligated to do Birkat Hamazon. Ela acha b'may askinan. So what are we talking about here? Kegon de'achal shiura derabanan. He only ate a rabbinical measure. So as we said right before, that you only obligated to from the Torah if you ate and was satiated, but if you were not satiated, so then it's only rabbinical, and therefore, right, even somebody who has a rabbinical obligation can come now and fulfill your obligation as well. So he says, right, that we have to deduce here. What is he asking? He, right? So why is he even asking this question? Because the truth is, right, this is a positive commandment, which is not time bound. So therefore, women should be obligated. What's the question? Midoraita from the Torah. But Rashi explains the Chibon Dichtiv, since it's written in the Torah, in Devarim, Al Aretz HaTorah, Asher Natanach, on the good land that he gave you, Nashim lo natlu chelek beretz enan chayavot. The women didn't have a portion in the land, so therefore you may think they're not obligated. But Tosfot katu, so Tosfot says the Tama mishum dichtiba. They said the reason is because it's written there, Al baritcha shechatamta be'vsainu, on your regarding your covenant that you sealed into our flesh. Be'al toratecha shelimadatanu. And also regarding your Torah that you taught us, so women are not obligated circumcision or to learn Torah. So therefore, they're also not obligated when it comes to Birkat Hamazon. So you may have thought like that. That's why they're asking, if that's the case or not. And we say later on, whoever didn't mention the Brit and the Torah and the Birkat Hamazon, lo yatzai decho b'davoto. He didn't fulfill his obligation. Katav Harashba Ilinyan Pasak Halacha. So it says, right, what's the halacha? Lo kaim alam kerabina ela keraba. So it says we paskin like Rava, not like Rabina. Demarle deoraita chada, that he says it's deoraita, it's from the Torah. Chada deraba rabbe derabinahu. One reason is because Rava was the rabbi of Ravina. And also we said right above that they're obligated in Birkat Hamazon. Pshita, so therefore, right, it turns out that it's from the Torah. So the Rashba and the Ravad, they both hold that for women, Birkat Hamazon is from the Torah. But however, Rabbeinu Yonah katab de'enan chayavot ela midrabanan. Rabbeinu Yonah says it's only rabbinical. והראש כתב, ולא הפשיטה הבעיה ילקח נשים אינן מציאות את האחרים דחובתן. So the Rosh says that, this question wasn't really answered in the Talmud, so therefore we say, right, that women shouldn't fulfill the obligation of others for this mitzvah. Why is that? Because it could be that it's only rabbinical for them. So it turns out, right, that the Rosh is telling you that it's a doubt, by him. He's in doubt about this. He's not sure. So just to be on the safe side, don't fulfill your obligation by way of a woman. And if you're going to tell me, right, what's the difference from that which we said, in Memchet Amud Aleph, להוציא אחרים ידי חובתן, that to fulfill the obligation of others, ad she'ochal kazait dagan, until he eats a kazait of grain, kazait eno chayav ela bidrabanan. Kishu kazait, when you have a kazait, you eat a kazait, it's only rabbinical, the obligation. Ve'afilu hachi motzi achrim, and nevertheless he fulfills the obligation of others. She'achlu kadesh sovan, that they fulfill the obligation, they ate until satiation. Mina Torah, from the Torah. Ve'im ken beishanami, so it says, if so, with women also, it's the same thing. Afa pishanan chayevet mina Torah, even though she's not obligated from the Torah. Totzi achrim shechayim min Torah, she can still fulfill obligation of others who are liable from the Torah. That's very interesting. Ve'esh tomar de ish papisha lo achal klum din hu shivtor et achrim. So there is to say is that a man, right, even though he didn't eat anything, he can still fulfill the obligation of others. The Holy Israel Arabim zeh. Why? Because all Jews are responsible one for the other. But rabbinically they said, but the rabbi said, don't bless the blessing of getting pleasure from this world without actually getting the pleasure. So therefore, when he ate a kazait, even though it's only rabbinically obligated, he can still feel the obligation of others, that ate until satiation. Okay. שערב הוא בעבורם, because after all, right, he's responsible for them. ועליו הוא להצילם מן העוון. He has to save them from sinning. Oh, there you go, right? So yeah, the Jews are responsible to save each other from sinning. And that's why we have an obligation to rebuke each other. If we see somebody doing something wrong, we have to rebuke them. Yeah, that's very important to understand that. Right, we saw also in the Gemara, right, in Sanhedrin, that if you don't rebuke, that they punish you too. And so that's what they're talking about here as well. Same thing. If you don't rebuke your fellow Jew, they punish you for not rebuking them. So it's like you also sinned. So you gotta, we're responsible for each other. Okay. So what does that have to do with our discussion here? Because if somebody needs, to do Birkat Hamazon, so we have to do it for them to save them from sinning. That's the idea. So look what it says. Interesting. This is interesting. So he says the women are not really responsible. Right? Why is that? So therefore she only can fulfill the obligation of somebody whose obligation was rabbinical. That's the end of it. So who says this? Let's see who says this. This was the Rosh, yeah. Okay. Mhm. And then he continues, "וכן כתב רמב"ם פרק ה' בשהוא ספק אם חייבו חייבות מן התורה." He also says, right, that it's a doubt whether women are obligated from the Torah to do Birkat Hamazon. So bottom line, right, is like this, that when it comes to women, they are obligated in Birkat Hamazon, but we're not really sure if it's from the Torah or from the rabbis, this obligation. So therefore, They cannot fulfill the obligation of the men for Birkat Hamazon, since their obligation is not on the same level. So as we said already, that nowadays we don't really say Birkat Hamazon one for the other. We don't really do that, as we said, because it's too long. You can't you can't you can't pay attention for such a long time span. So therefore, that's why we do read it ourselves now. But anyway, right? Just the idea that women is only for rabbinical, the obligation. That's the way it is. And he moves on. מה שכתב רבנו בדינן להצטרף לזימון, right? So now we're talking about something also very interesting. The question is now, what about, okay, so for Birkat Hamazon, now we understand what's going on. But what about Zimun, right? Do they have this mitzvah of Zimun or not? The women. So he says that it'll be explained later on, right? Rabbeinu B'dinan Nisaf Zimun. So he says, Bet Yosef, he explains, Besiman Kuf Tzadik Tet. It's going to be in the following chapters, right? In 199. Over there, we're going to talk about that. Whether women are obligated in Zimun or not. It's a very interesting situation with that. Okay, so I guess we'll deal with it there when we get there. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch here. Aleph. We have to bring it up because this is a new chapter. So this is Kuf Pei Vav, right? Okay. Pei Vav. So says over here the Shulchan Aruch. Nashim chayavot birkat hamazon. As we said, women are obligated to do birkat hamazon. הספק הוא אם הם חייבות בין דאורייתא ומוציאות מן הנשים. So we have a doubt, right, whether they're obligated from the Torah, and therefore they would be able to fulfill the obligation of the men as well, או אם אינן חייבות אלא מדרבנן, or it's only rabbinical, אינן מוציאות אלא מי שאין חיבור אלא מדרבנן. So if that's the case, they would only fulfill the obligation of those who are obligation is rabbinical. So, right, the interesting thing is that, as we said yesterday, that if a person eats but doesn't get satiated, he ate bread, kazait or more, so he's not really obligated from the Torah. So there, the woman has the same obligation as the man. When it really changes is when he's satiated, and then already the obligation is not the same anymore. The man is a higher level, so therefore the woman cannot say it for him. Okay, very good. Um, so we'll move on. There's one more in this chapter here, two of them. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the children. So it says the Torah, Katan chayab midrabanan kedei lechanecho, right? The children are obligated also from the rabbis. What's the purpose? The purpose is to train them, right, for the mitzvah. So therefore, the rabbis obligated them for training. So says the Beit Yosef, mitoch ma shkatabti b'samuch b'tber ken. So he says, I already wrote to explain this. ועד ימינן דעירא בשאכל שיעורא דרבנן, היינו כל זמן שלא שבע דמן התורה אינו חייב לברך אלא אם כן אכל כדי שביעה. דכתיב ואכלת ושבעת וברכת ורבנן אמרו דכיוון דאכל כזית יברך. So what he just said here was exactly what I just told you. That the obligation can fluctuate depending on how much you ate. So same thing as here. Right, so let me see inside the tour. There are some things we need to read there. So it says it through like this. Katan chayav birkat hamazon, right? As we said, Katan, the child, is obligated to do birkat hamazon, midrabanan from the rabbis, kedei lechancho, in order to train him, mitzvot v'hud, ve'hi deben mevarech de'aviv, meiret k'she'achal shiur derabanan. So then, how is it that the son can fulfill the obligation of the father? It would only be if the father ate like a small amount, as we said. Right? He wasn't satiated. So then both of them, their obligation is from the rabbis. V'raiti b'sefer mitzvot katan, katav. I saw it says sefer mitzvot. It says al shem ri, in the name of the ri, misha lo achal yachol lebarech leotzi min misha achal. He says there that whoever didn't eat, he's able to really, full obligation of the one who ate. But lo neher, so I said, but it doesn't sound right. Because we said, right, that you cannot fulfill the obligation of others unless you ate a kazait. Yerushalmi masmich le'akra. And Yerushalmi, right, it brings it from this verse, this whole thing. Okay, that's the end of the tour, the whole chapter there. That's it. So good. Let's go to Bet Yosef. So says Bet Yosef, ראיתי ושמח על שם רי, מי שלא אכל יכול להוציא מי שאכל, ולא נהרה. So the Torah said, right, that there is an opinion that says that somebody who didn't eat can fulfill the obligation of somebody who ate. And he says, doesn't sound right. He rejects that. So it says regarding that, the Bet Yosef, זה לשון סמ"ק, that's what it says in סמ"ק, אמרו חכמים, כל הברכות כולם שיצא, מוציא חוץ, so it says all the blessings, right, that he fulfills obligation, he can also motzi chutz, he can also fulfill the obligation of others as well. Chutz mi birkat alechem, except for the bread, he says, and for the wine. And the same thing also applies for any mitzvah, which is pleasure, based, whatever, to benefit, to enjoy something. Birkat yain shel kiddush. But what about the kiddush, the blessing of the kiddush of the wine? Masik hatam de motzi birkat hamazon. Right. So he says there. It says in the Gemara that you can fulfill your obligation of others. So why is that, by the way? The reason is because when it comes to kiddush, it's not only for pleasure. You're doing the blessing of the kiddush, which is a mitzvah also. So it's not only the pleasure of it. The pleasure just right, the main point there is the mitzvah of the kiddush, right? And the pleasure is just something on the side, right? So that's why it works in that case. But when it's only pleasure and nothing else, right, that's a different story. Birkat hamazon omer ri the motzi. So when it comes to birkat hamazon, says the Ri, yes, you can fulfill the obligation of others. B'lashon Yerushalmi lo mashmaken, but it says Yerushalmi, it doesn't imply like that. Ad kan lashon, that's the end of it. Okay, it's interesting. So there is an opinion like that you can fulfill the obligation of others, even though you didn't eat. But we don't paskin like that. We're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch. But anyway, so it says a bit Yosef, right, that the words of the Samak are very, cryptic here. Because from the words of Tosfot, V'Arosh, Mordechai, all these rabbis, V'Samag, בפרק 3 שאכלו, יתבהר לך דעה, דמה רי, you'll understand like this, right, that which the Ri said, the Birkat Hamazon, even though he fulfills obligation, he also fulfills obligation of others. This doesn't mean that he holds that that's halacha. Because everybody knows that, everybody agrees that he doesn't fulfill the obligation of others until he eats a kazait of dagan, of grains. So therefore, he means to say like this: that which required that he should eat kazait of grains. It's not because of the issue with Birkat Hamazon. Damia la Birkat Nehanin. It's more like the blessing of pleasure, of getting pleasure from something. She'im yatsa. Because if he that if he does fulfill his obligation, doesn't fulfill the obligation of others, the lo dami ala the birkat mitzvot really resembles the blessing of the mitzvot. The Tama de birkat ne'anin mishum delet behu arvut. Because the reason why we don't do this when it comes to the blessings of pleasure is because there's no issue there of arvut, which means like being responsible one for the other. Because they're not obligation on person. In other words, you don't have to do that if you don't want. You don't have to eat, drink if you don't want. It's up to you. Because don't eat, right, if you don't want, then don't enjoy it. When it comes to Birkat Hamazon, he already ate there. So he's obligated to bless now. Yeshkan arbut, so therefore there is there an issue of right, responsibility one for the other. And therefore, even though he didn't eat motzi, he does full obligation. And when they said, right, you have to eat kazait of the grains, in order, only because you should be able to say that we ate. But it says in Yerushalmi lo mashma achir. Doesn't imply like that. אלא דמדמין הוצאת ידי חובתו הצליחו. That we say over there that fulfilling the obligation, they required that you should eat a kazait, the gun, right? Otherwise, you can't do it. She'amru sham deshani berachat Birkat Hamazon demra kra. So they said over there that Birkat Hamazon is different. Why? Because the pasuk said ve'achalta v'sabachta v'berachta. You should eat and be satiated and bless. Mi she'achal hu yivarech. Only a person who ate can bless. Umizei yitba'er lecha shelo haba lesamak lichtob stam And from here, you understand that the Smak should not have written Omeri, that the Re says the Motzi, Mashma, the full obligation of others. The Mashma de Letle Hadaminan, that implies that it doesn't hold like that which we said, regarding what we said, that he can not fulfill the obligation of others until he ate a kazait of grains. Okay, we're almost done with this. But so it says it's clear that if Rabbeinu, right, would have gone into the depths of this whole thing, והדבר, I'm sorry, I skipped something here. That it doesn't hold this thing where, that which we said, they can fully obligation of others, that he eats a kazait of greens. ודבר ברור שאם היה רבנו יורד לעומק הדברים, לא היה כותב דלא נהרה משום... So he says, so it's clear that if Rabbeinu the Tur would have gone into the depths of this whole thing, he wouldn't have said that it doesn't make sense. Why? משום דאמינן להוציא את חברו עד שיאכל כזית. Because we said that to fulfill obligation of others, you have to eat a kazait. So then it's okay. It is logical. מי שאכל שיעורא דרבנן, או מצא מפיק למי שאכל שיעורא דאורייתא, כתב רבנו בסימן קצ"ז, right? So also another thing is, if you ate a right amount of, which it's only rabbinical, can you fulfill the obligation of somebody who ate the amount which is from the Torah? So he says there, the Tur writes this halacha in chapter 197. So, okay, that's it. That's the end of the Beit Yosef. So we'll see what's in the Shulchan Aruch Bet. So it says here, Katav Chayav B'Darabanan, right? Katan is only liable for Birkat Hamazon from the rabbis, Kedei Lechanecho, in order to train him for the mitzvah. V'yahi the ben mevarech le'aviv keshelo achal kedei sviyah. So he says, therefore, when the Talmud said that the son can bless for the father, that's only if the father ate like a small amount, right? That he wasn't satiated. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So there, if he ate only a small amount, he was only obligated from the rabbis. So therefore, the son could fulfill his obligation. Okay, that's it. That's the end of the chapter. So we have a little bit more time. Maybe we can move on. Let's see what we can do. So Shulchan Aruch, now we're going to Kuf Pei Zayin. So let's see what we got there. Okay, so I'll read to Beit Yosef. Let's see what it says here. It says over here, yeah, so now we're really getting into the the laws of Birkat Hamazon. So it says over here like this: Tan Rabbanan Seder Brachot Birkat Hamazon Rishona Birkat Hamazon. So now we're getting into the structure of the Birkat Hamazon, right? Of the prayer. So the first blessing is called Hazan, right? Because we say Hazan Takol in the blessing there, right? What does that mean, by the way? Hazan. That means that he nourishes everybody, right? God is gracious to everybody, so everybody gets nourished in this world, whether it's people, right, or animals or anything else, right? Everybody gets his share. He nourishes everybody. So that's the first blessing that we bless Hashem in Birkat Hamazon. So there's a whole thing about this. We're going to get into this whole thing, right? Which is, who wrote these blessings, right? It's a whole discussion in itself. So we'll see, right? If I'm not mistaken, they say that this first blessing was written by Moshe Rabbeinu, and then the second one was written by Yoshua bin Nun. So anyway, let's see what we got here. The third one was written by who? Right, King David and King Solomon, right? Shlomo. Uh, and the fourth one was written by who? The fourth one is rabbinical. It was written uh, after the destruction of the second temple by the rabbis, the sages there, because of this, the town of Beitar. That they were given to be buried and all this, the whole thing there. That's how it was written, the Birkat Hamazon. And then we have the final piece, right, which is we call it the Rachamans, right, which is really just a custom, basically, that stuff. It's not really from the Torah, and it's not really from a decree of the rabbis either. So the way we consider it is like this, the first three blessings are from the Torah, and the final one, the fourth blessing, is from the rabbis, and then the rest of it is just a custom. That's how it's divided up, this whole structure of the Birkat Hamazon. So anyway, that's my little introduction there. So let's look at the bit Yosef, right? See what he says here. Right? Where is this written? In Brachot, Memchet Amud Bet. מסיים בשנייה ברכת הארץ, שלישית בוני ירושלים, רביעית הטוב ומיטיב, מזכירים רבנו בסימן זה, בסימנים הבאים אחריו. So he tells you right over here from the Gemara, all the three blessings, the four blessings that we have in Birkat Hamazon. So we already mentioned that just now, and so let's see what else we got here. So it says right exactly what I told you guys. So he says right that who made, as we said, right, Moshe Rabbeinu, right, wrote the first blessing. When was that? He says when the man came down. They start to eat the man in the desert. So that's when he started. He wrote this first blessing. That's also in the brachot, right? It says the Rashba there. As we said, right? Moshe did the first one, then Yoshua did the second one, right? So that's how it goes, right? As we mentioned. So it says like difficult for me. The brachot elu mideoraita. But wait a second, right? Didn't we say that the first three blessings are from the Torah? So then how can it be, right, that it was written by Yoshua, right? Yoshua was after the giving of the Torah. And also Moshe Rabbeinu, it should be from Hashem, right? If it's from the Torah. Okay, so we'll see how that works, right? למרה באיזה מטבע שירצה, אומרה, ועטו משה ויהושע ודוד ותקנו להם מטבע. Oh, look what it says, right? Very nice. So he says, right, that, yeah, it's true. It's all from the Torah, but the way it works is like this, that from the Torah, a person can say just anything, anything that comes to his head, and that will be fine. But then came, right, these rabbis, Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua, right, and then David HaMelech, right, and what they did was they made like a standard, text, right, for everybody, instead of doing whatever you feel like. That's what they did. They standardized it. Okay. בזמנו, כדאמינא פרק כיצד מברכים, שק הדת החמינא, כי אמרה בלשון חול יצא. So it says right over there in the Gemara, you may have thought to say that if he said it in like foreign language, he fulfills obligation. When he said right that when the rabbis decreed it, lo yatsa. But if he doesn't say it the way the rabbis decreed it, he didn't fulfill obligation. Right. So in other words, he's saying like this, right? That you have to say it the way the rabbis decreed it, with the same text. And then if you do that, even if you say it in the foreign language, right, you still your full obligation. כמה שמונה דמטבע הוא טבעו רבנן ודאי קודם כיבוש הארץ ובניין ירושלים לא היו אומרים כמטבע שאמרו לאחר כיבוש. So he says, you see from there that before they conquered Jerusalem, right, they weren't saying the same text as they're saying afterwards, because that's when the King David came in, right, and wrote the third blessing there. ובניין כמו שאין אנו אומרים באותו מטבע שתקנו דוד שלמה. So he says, just like we don't say like the text that was made by David and Shlomo, שאנו מבקשים להחזיר המלכות ולבנות הבית, because we're now saying, right, to Hashem, build the kingdom, right, and return us to Eretz Israel and build the temple. So in other words, obviously, Shlomo wasn't saying that because he already built the temple. So that wasn't the right proper time, right? So there was something also added there extra. להמשיך שלום בארץ and שלוות הארץ and to have peace in the land. וכן כתב גם כן הראש, that's what it says in the ראש. וכתבו רבנו בסימן קפ"ח, and Rabbeinu writes this in the chapter, והרמב"ן כתב בספר ההשגות, אין מטבע ברכת המזון מן התורה. So it says the Ramban like this, right, that the text of the Birkat HaMazon is not from the Torah. Right? It's just that the Torah commands us to bless Hashem, In other words, any way you want to do it, just do it, after you ate. Right? Each one according to his own judgment. Minyamin Raya Shamar Barich Rachamana Mare Dehai Pita, right? Like this Jew who used to say, right, in Aramaic, bless God in Aramaic blessing, that he, just kind of like conjured up on his own volition. So then, right, what happened was the prophets came and gave them like a standard, text to pray. הלשון רצח המליצה ושנינו בו אנחנו עוד בגלות ומלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה ותחזיננה כולם ותבנה ירושלים כי העניין תיקן שלמה ובית דינו בלשון כפי הזמנים יאמר. So he says, right, that now that we say that we're asking Hashem to rebuild, right, the Jerusalem and the temple, that's something which came later on, when we went to the galut, when we went to the exile. That was like, altered like that, it was like adjusted. Okay, good. So let's see what else we got here. Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. We still have a lot to do here. So Bezat Hashem, we'll pick it up next time, I guess. So anyway, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We'll see you tomorrow.
Kavod Harav, where we are left. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, we just finished the with David and Shlomo, the blessing, the third blessing. We just finished that. So now we're gonna go further than that, right? Next time. Into other blessings. Okay, God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Amen.
Laila Tov.